Hello, hi everyone. We're gonna give everyone just a few more minutes to trickle in here. We'll probably start in about 3 minutes. Just gonna let a few more people trickle in at the top of the hour here. So give us about 2, 3 minutes, and we'll get started today. Okay. Welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is recorded, so if anyone does come in a little bit late, we'll be sending this out afterwards. But we're going to go ahead and get started so that we can hopefully get through everything and get to our Q&A session at the end as well. So welcome everyone. I'm Brittany Curry. I lead marketing here at Airia. We're so glad that you could join us today. Our goal for today is really, just to talk about a problem that we're seeing across a lot of enterprises. We're not here to pitch you anything or run a product demo. We really want to talk about a conversation or have a conversation about this problem that we're seeing across enterprises. One that we think is kind of worth slowing down and thinking through really in an architectural lens. And to walk us through that conversation, I'm joined today by Parth. He is one of our solutions engineers here at Airia. Parth spends his day working in and out with the enterprises that we have on our roster, exactly on these kind of challenges that we're going to be getting into. So I'm going to hand it over to him to introduce himself and get started. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A session. If you have any questions during Parth's presentation, feel free to put them in the Q&A. We'll either answer them live during the presentation, or we'll answer them at the end for everyone. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Parth.
Thanks, Brittany. Hey, everyone. I'm Parth. I'm on the solution engineering team here at Airia. I spend most of my time helping enterprise organizations figure out what's actually happening across their AI landscape and what to do about it. I'm so glad you're all here. Let's get right into it. I want to start with a question first, right? How many AI tools are running in your organization right now? Um, you can answer in chat if you want, or by the way, these are not the ones that you approved, not the ones that have gone through procurement, not the ones that are on like a list of for budget. The honest answer is that if you ran a DNS query or browser extension audit or tried to truly dig in and find out what that number is, it would never be exactly the same as you see. So what you're seeing on the slide here isn't just a list of tools that are out there. It's actually quite the opposite, right? These are extremely useful tools that your employees are probably using on a day-to-day basis. But the gap between what's actually in use and what security and governance organizations uh, actually have visibility into and understand is what we're about to talk to you today. So let me add some context here, right? Let me add some color here. These numbers that you're seeing on the screen actually come from our benchmark data that we ran over Q1 and some of the conversations we are having day in, day out with CIOs, CISOs, and security leaders across different enterprises every single day. The first number you see, which is 10, right? The average business unit now touches 10 AI products in a typical month. Not 10 that are procured, but rather 10 that people in the organization reached out for and started using on their own. Either you might have blocked it across the enterprise, but still there are people out there who want to use these tools and decide to use those. And the reason that particular number actually matters isn't just the volume, it's the surface area, the landscape that it creates for you to then go out and govern, right? Each one of these tools has its own data security policy, its own retention capabilities, its own model language that's buried somewhere in the terms of service. Now you multiply that by every business unit within your organization, and now you can truly understand the exposure that's out there. Looking at the second one that's out there, so you can see nearly 3/4 of enterprise AI spend that happens is landing outside of IT overall. It's happening on a corporate card, it shows up on an expense report, and sometimes it's not shown anywhere at all because it doesn't match a threshold. These are tools that never pass through procurement or security review, and it's not because procurement is super slow, vendor onboarding is slow, or IT is difficult. It's because AI has made it easy for all these tools to get adopted. And these tools are available instantly, and the business need is real and immediate. Uh, this process that we have currently, it wasn't really built for the speed at which AI really moves, right? And the last thing, when you see the 1 in 4 data, the sort of story behind it is 1 in 4 security or AI leaders that we speak to can actually produce a complete list of AI systems running against their corporate data. It's not that high. The other three can usually hand you policy documents, can hand us, uh, some Excel sheet that they get based on some surveys that they did internally, or even ran some scanning that they did on top of it. But those are very different artifacts from each other. Like one will tell you what's supposed to happen, the other will tell you what's actually happening. And right now, most organizations have part of those two things. Here's what makes this particularly urgent. It's the gap between those two artifacts, what you expect to happen and what is currently happening, the policy and the reality. That's where the exposure truly lives. So now, what what do we do about it? So this isn't a story about bad employees with malicious intent trying to get around the rules that you set. It's natural outcome of a legitimate problem. We have seen this previously with IT. We've seen this, when mobile devices came into play. We've seen that same thing where people just wanted to be a bit more productive. AI tools are fast, they're accessible, and they're genuinely useful. Your developer can spin up an agent, let's say, connected to production data, and it can easily ship before security ever has a chance to review it. The reason for that is the tool works, the tool is effective, and the deadline is real. You want to derive value from it, you don't want to hamper innovation. So your analyst then pastes customer data into a third-party LLM to speed up a report because it saves 2 hours and the output is good. Or your, let's say, operations team subscribes to some sort of AI workflow tool out there and builds automations that IT has absolutely zero visibility into, um, because it solves a problem that no one else was solving fast enough. This gives people agency, and they just want to act on it. These are not malicious decisions by any given means. These are rational ones. The problem that we have here isn't intent, It's that there is no system in place to give those employees a path that has oversight, that is governed to the tools that they're already going to use anyway. And that's the problem that we see out there. That's what we are talking about, and that's the gap we need to close. That's the visibility problem. So it brings us to the core of it, right? You cannot govern what you cannot see, what you cannot observe. When we talk to enterprises about where the visibility problem really lives, it shows up in three blind spots. Based on most of the conversations I've had, the first one, the most common one that I see out there is tools. Which AI products are actually in use across the organization? How many are sanctioned? How many are unsanctioned? Are they free? Are they paid? Have people signed up for certain terms of use that they shouldn't have been? Is it in the approved list? Um, and the second most common thing, and most of you on the call would agree with me, is data. What happens with the data? What does the data security look like? How does the corporate data leaving your perimeter for inference, training, or retrieval? What's truly going on there, and to which vendors, right? And finally, decisions. AI made a particular decision. Can I backtrack that, right? Which automated outputs are out there that have influenced the customer interaction that we have, or a financial number that we have, or a hiring decision? And how do we truly surface all of that in the 90 days? And is there explainability associated to it? So most enterprises we talk to are not able to answer all of these three today, right? It's not because it's that there is no infrastructure in place, or the teams are they don't focus on these things, but it's more so around uh, there is no system of record truly that produces the answer, right? So that's what we mean by the visibility problem. It's not really structural. Sorry, it's not really. It is structural. It's not really cultural, right? It's not something to do with the people themselves. So what does that solution look like from an architectural standpoint? I just said it is structural. So we spent a little bit of time defining this out. You have four main capabilities. You have governance, attribution, enforcement, and visibility. It follows one principle. Each of them is built on top of the other. So each layer depends on the one beneath it. And if you skip any one of these, the stack above doesn't really hold and it falls like a pack of cards. So let's start with the very bottom one, the most critical one, visibility. This is where you have a live inventory of every AI tool, model, and integrations, MCPs that you have out there that is touching corporate data. The operative word here is live. It's not something that you run every quarter in a spreadsheet, not something that's point in time audit. It needs to be continuous. It needs to be active. The AI tooling in your organization changes week to week. The inventory needs to keep up. Think of it like an ontology or a network map, right? Instead of devices, now you're mapping every single model, integrations, flows of data that are going through, and you cannot make security or governance ask about something that isn't visible or isn't on the map. Second, you have enforcement. So you have policies that are now expressed as code. Who can use what, where, which models. These are usually enforced at runtime, not really reviewed at contract time. The distinction here truly matters because the policy lives in a document that gets reviewed maybe once a year or every 6 months, depending on what your sort of risk assessment cycle is. But a policy that gets written in code gets enforced on every single respect. That's the difference that we see between the rule that's out there and a true guardrail that enforces it. Number three, attribution. You have so many decisions that are being made. Explainability is a big deal. Every decision needs to be able to trace to a user, a tool, an input, or an output. Not for compliance, not for just regulation for the sake of regulation, but for true best practices. You need audit, you need incident responses, you need model learning. And when something goes wrong, and this is usually for larger organizations, it happens at an enterprise scale, uh, and something eventually might go wrong. Attribution is your forensics. It tells you what happened, when it happened, why it happened. Otherwise, you're just shooting in the dark. Everything builds up to active governance and overall governance. The workflow layer at the very top, it aligns your AI rollout that you have, your AI program that you have, with things like risk, regulatory requirements, and ethics posture. It truly lives inside runtime. It cannot be trapped in a document. This is where policy truly translates effectively into process. You have approvals, you have change management, you have exception handling, and all of this is running in the same exact system that is now enforcing your controls. It's not sitting in a separate spreadsheet that you now have to provide access to, that maybe no one updates, and every single time there is a new document. It's all here, right here. If you take one thing from this conversation is this particular slide, right? You have visibility, enforcement, attribution, and governance. These are the four capabilities every enterprise AI control layer absolutely must deliver. Everything else, whatever the platform of choice is, do you want to build versus do you want to buy? What vendors do you want to choose? What are the security controls? How do you actually implement it? These are all just details that sit underneath this framework. Once you have this thing hardened up, once you understand this end to end, the rest is just the how. So before we go any further, let me actually work on clearing a few misconceptions. When I had similar conversations with other people, there were a few things that a lot of organizations do get confused with. Uh, so let's clear up these three things. You have the control layer that often gets confused with each of these three. You have the first one, which is it's not a replacement for your AI tools. Let's be very clear on that. It's not something that replaces what's already existing. It sits across your entire existing stack. Your tools stay as is. The oversight across that tool really gets taken up a notch. Second, it's not even a vendor lock and play. A well-built control layer that you have, once you build it out, it needs to be model agnostic. It needs to work regardless of which platforms are out there, which models are out there, or workflows that your teams are using today or will be using next year, or day 200, 300, 400, 500. And lastly, a control layer is not a compliance checkbox. It's not about sending evidences to an auditor once a quarter, going through a bunch of interviews for risk assessment and figuring out where things stand. It truly needs to be operationalized at an infrastructure level, the same way network security is for infrastructure as well. It needs to run continuously and actively, because the usage, the tools, and the pace with which AI is evolving, it changes every single day. Each of these misconceptions captures, a part of the picture as I see it. None of them overall is architecture. A control layer is what combines all three and adds the parts they each miss. So let's talk about where risk actually compounds when the architecture isn't in place. You have the four layers. You have the first one, which is the perimeter, sort of the boundary. Who accesses what? This is sort of the control at your entry point, which your employees, what roles are accessible, what data is accessible to whom, which systems can reach which AI tools and models. The very first one, when this layer is unmanaged, the answer is effectively everyone can access it. And that includes people who shouldn't have access to the data those models can reach out to. Most organizations have these strong perimeter controls already, though, right? Very few have controls, however, over AI specifically. So that's the key call out here. It's not that perimeter controls don't exist. It's more so we need to have equivalent controls over that specific AI surface area. Second is the inspection layer. What is truly being said? What is flowing in and out of your systems. You have your prompts coming in, responses, completions, file attachments, retrieval. This is where sensitive data exposure truly happens. And it happens quietly, and it happens at scale, more than you realize. Right? An employee doesn't have to do anything dramatically wrong. They don't have to be malicious. Maybe they paste a customer record into a prompt, or some sensitive data into something like open, Claw or Chat GPT overall. And now that data based on your enterprise agreement can be used to a third party vendor under whatever that legal team has approved. And in a lot of cases, legal team hasn't even approved that. Behavioral layer. This is what agents can do. So this is actually one of the most common things I've been asked over the past couple of months is agents are now no longer in just answering questions. They are not just chatbots. They have true agency. They are taking actions on behalf of the user or on its own. They have a true autonomy. And when you don't have any defined, enforced boundaries, or you know any database calls are being made or APIs are being called, workflows are being triggered, emails are being sent out. At this point, you need those boundaries on what that agent can do, uh, not just an open set of permissions. That is not actually a theoretical risk. That is a true operational risk. Last, you have the governance layer. Ensuring that AI systems are, built, modified, and deployed through an auditable process and a structured process is key. This is usually the layer that we observe that breaks down most often in teams that are fast moving, because you want to ship, you want to ensure that the tools that you're building are out there being used. AI is being truly adopted. It's one of the most common KPIs that we've seen out there. Governance usually in those cases feels like a friction, an obstacle. However, having that true control layer that we just talked about makes it the path of least resistance and not an obstacle to it. The order that I mentioned earlier, if you think of the VEAG, that is not arbitrary. It's actually load bearing. One bears the load of the next. And here's what the current state looks like currently in every single environment. You might have bits and pieces of it, but you have 4 AI tools, 4 businesses. There are 16 direct connections. There is uh, minimal identity checks, minimal policies, and minimal logging capabilities. Now look at this diagram for just a second. It's not just showing that the architecture overall is messy. It's showing you different relationships, each having its own data handling capabilities, right? Each has its own implicit trust. Each completely is invisible to your security functions, your compliance functions, uh, and there is no choke point. There is no way to mediate anything that happens. There is absolutely no place in this picture where you could just insert a policy and have it apply everywhere. In practice, the real number in your organization isn't really 16. Uh, it's much larger. And typically, when we talk to customers, that calculation typically lands in the hundreds. So every line on this diagram that you see is an AI conversation your security team, your governance teams, your compliance and audit functions may or may not be able to see. Every line is an incident that is just waiting to be discovered after the fact. The good thing is you don't really have to fix it all individually. You just needed to collapse it through one single place or a couple of different places. And that's exactly what this next slide shows. Same business units, same AI tools, but just having one single visibility point. A control layer where you have visibility, enforcement, attribution, and governance. And these will be its default behaviors and not really afterthoughts. Now just see how it changes everything structurally. Every request is now going through that single plane. That means you just have one place where you need to enforce policy, one place to log activity, one place to record any auditing decisions, and one place to apply any controls to mitigate any risks, or even when a new regulation lands or anything new emerges. You don't have to update 16 relationships, you update one. Every request is audited, it's a single policy plane, and there are no blind spots. And I want to be clear about something, right? It's not, notice what's actually not on this slide. There is no specific vendor, there is no specific model, there is no specific product. And that's intentional because a control layer is a pattern. It's an architecture that you want to build and not a product purchase. The right architecture that you choose for your organization should ensure that you can swap the vendor underneath as the market evolves and as the need of your organization evolves. The wrong architecture for it means you are truly locked into a decision before you can fully understand the problem itself. But if the architecture is right, you can swap the vendors. If the architecture is wrong, changing the vendors won't help you. And that is the decision that you need to be getting right today. So last thing, we opened today with a question. How many AI tools is your organization using right now? The honest answer today for most enterprises is nobody knows the full amount. With a control layer, that answer moves to a dashboard, a clock, a schedule, a question you can ask or actually plan against. Today, maybe you can name two or three. Most leaders can list the obvious tools out there. The risk is in the dozens they cannot. In the next 90 days, once you have the control layer set up, you can produce an inventory. A control layer's very first deliverable is visibility, giving you the full landscape, a live, complete picture of AI in use across the organization. In 6 months, you govern at runtime. Policies become code. Approval becomes part of the existing workflows that you have. And audit becomes automatic, not a fire drill that happens every single quarter. Um, think of the control layer more so as an architectural principle. It's not a product. The earlier you adopt it, the smaller amount of efforts you'll have to clean things up. And the later you adopt it, the more you might find yourself cleaning some of those things up in public. That was all. And at this point, we are happy to take any questions, and I'll pass it back to Brittany.
Hi, yes. Okay, awesome. Parth, we do have a couple questions through the both in the Q&A and the chat. So I'm going to start to go through some of those. This first one from Christina, how is this different from what our hyperscaler already provides?
As I said, this is not vendor specific, right? So you have hyperscalers that might provide some of it or most of it. Uh, Hyperscalers would be able to provide you with network layer capabilities. It would be able to provide you with visibilities up to a certain level. But as you go and more interactions I've had with clients, the more you realize that there are still gaps in what the hyperscaler provides, and you need a true partner to those hyperscalers to truly enhance what you see. So hyperscalers do provide, like, it'll get you up to 80-90% of the way, but there's still about 20-30% that you will need to truly get the full visibility and governance aspect into things.
Awesome. Okay. This next one, how to really address AI use with PHI, how to best minimize the risk.
So here's what I would say, and I would say that it's a recommendation. I'm by no means a lawyer. So from a PHI standpoint, I know that's extremely sensitive data. But what we've seen out there is a few different approaches. You can start at the data layer itself, where you prevent the data from ever going to the language model in the first place, or you have controls on the devices themselves to not allow those types of uploads. In certain cases, that might fall through. You might still have PHI flowing through. In those cases, you have guardrails that are available. You have all these vendors out there that do something similar, and you can associate those guardrails. Lastly, and this is most important, especially with PHI, there are use cases that I've come across where they do want to have PHI be sent to the language model and use AI. At that point, the best way to handle it, at least based on my understanding, and there might be some folks out there in our chat who can even chime in on this, but the answer to that would be you have your own hosted version of a language model that's contained and ensure that PHI only goes through that and you have full visibility into it.
Okay, awesome. This next one, with AI regulations constantly evolving, but a different pace by geography. Can you elaborate on how this kind of control layer would help comply with US and or global regulations like the EU AI Act?
Very, very good question. So uh, if you worked with controls previously, you realize that there is a huge crosswalk that happens across those controls. So once you set things up for one of them, you have maybe done 35% or 65% of the other framework. Um, with the VEAG framework that I just shared, most of the compliance or the regulations that are coming out, the primary focus is on visibility. We have seen that with data privacy previously, but from a visibility standpoint, all they care about is a few different things. Number one, can you explain what has happened? And number two, do you know where things are? At the very core of it, at the very basic of it, sort of, think of it from a first principle standpoint, and that's what we get to. The idea here is you start somewhere and then you scale up. So let's say you pick EU AI Act, you ensure you have compliance over there, and you'll start seeing you've already done 65, 70% of work for some of the other ones out there.
Okay, awesome. Here's another one. I would contend that cost management and monitoring of AI tools and subscriptions is another layer in the controls landscape. Where would you place it?
Really good question. So I would actually place it you know, in that same tranche. It's you need visibility into it as the first thing. So uh, cost management and monitoring falls. The cost monitoring of it falls into the visibility, and then you have attribution and governance as like every single step. And I completely agree with that. Runaway cost is a huge uh, problem that we've seen, in my conversations with organizations out there. And I would say use the VEAG framework to just apply to it and see what you get there. But I would place it across the stack.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we've got time for a couple more here. How do you enforce that all GPT traffic goes through the platform?
Now, that is an interesting question. I would say I think that this would end up being a longer conversation based on the time we have. I'll say this. In certain cases, uh, GPT, I'm I'm assuming you're talking about Chat GPT as the platform itself, but Chat GPT as a platform would have its own set of controls. Uh, uh, and if you're using the GPT models, you can do additional things from a redirection perspective and ensure that your network layer has some of that visibility capabilities in place.
Okay, time for one more. What is the integration Airia has with Microsoft Purview tagging?
Good question. I think we should follow up on that offline because it's product specific, and I want to make sure we answer if there are any other questions around architecture.
Yeah, for anyone that's asked a question, we can also follow up with you with a bit more information. Either Parth or myself can specifically reach out with some questions. But yeah, I think we're coming up at time here. I know we had set it to 35 minutes, so I want to say thank you again for everyone for coming. Big thank you for Parth for joining us and going through this. And we will be sending over both the recording and the slides over probably later today or tomorrow. So be on the lookout. And if you answered a question, we'll also be trying to get in touch with you to kind of follow up there as well. So thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, all.